Welcome to Big Homeopathy. Your host, Sarah Thompson, the Big Homeopath. So, when I started this video channel, I was doing research to learn how to make a good channel. And one of the things I came across was the instruction that you should have your content be controversial because people will engage with you. And I think that's funny because as a homeopath, as soon as I'm out there on social media with the homeopath tag, I'm attracting all kinds of attention. And it's fun to really compare the difference between the way people who are proponents of homeopathy talk about it and the way other people, some of whom call themselves skeptics, or people who are talking about conventional medicine, talk about what has called them to it. And one of the things that I see over and over again with homeopathy, and this is Kelly Callahan has a podcast, 1M, a homeopath's podcast. I hope you all are subscribed to it, and if you're not, I'll let you know how to do that. Where she always asks the guest the question, "What brought you to homeopathy?" And that's a great question because over and over again you see that people come to homeopathy because they witness some miracle and they have to know more. And so that kind of curiosity and awe that homeopaths bring to the table is something that I so appreciate, and it's worth every minute of negative attention that I sometimes will attract. But today I want to tell one of my own stories, which is a story about some pain that I developed several years ago in my legs. It was a wandering pain. It was keeping me awake at night. It eventually settled into my knees, which got very, very swollen, totally immobilized. I was having terrible fatigue. I never had a diagnosis. Some people might say that it sounded somewhat like Lyme or another tick-borne infection, but what mattered was that I went to see my homeopath, Nancy Frederick, down in Portland, Maine, and after a couple of tries, she gave me rhododendron, and it resolved completely. And it took some time for me to get full mobility back in my knees, but this was several years ago, and now I'm 42, and I can comfortably sit in a full squat without any pain in my knees, and I have no residual effects from that illness, which is just really fabulous. And so I was sort of curious to look up Lyme and homeopathy, and there are a lot of case studies. Ronald Whitmont has a great article that I will link to about it. But when I was doing that exploration, I came across this study about osteoarthritis in dogs. And I like to talk about animal study because you get such a clear picture in an animal. You're not having that sort of placebo effect bogeyman that people talk about. And in this study, the analysis was 3 different protocols. One was a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug called carprofen. One was a combination remedy called Zeal, and one was the placebo group. And the results were very, very clear that both the NSAID and the homeopathic remedy were much more effective than placebo in relieving pain in these animals, in improving mobility, in force plate response, the external payment evaluation that the vets and the owners would do with the animals. And I have those numbers, but what's interesting about the numbers is that they point to something else that's very important about homeopathic research and about homeopathy in general, which is that the NSAID drug in that moment, in a short window, this was an 8-week study, it was in Finland, there were 51 dogs, 44 of them finished the study. If you give that NSAID, it's going to be the most immediate, most obvious improvement in pain over the short term. And if you're not thinking about side effects, such as, for this particular drug, loss of appetite, vomiting, diarrhea, thirst, hyperemia, fatigue, and coordination, seizures, jaundice, lethargy, or paralysis, if that stuff's not on your radar, then you give the NSAID. But you're not ever going to achieve a cure with that. That's not ever going to get the animal or the person to the point where they don't ever remember that they were in pain. And so the numbers for this study, you have the veterinary mobility index, 66.7% improvement with carprofen, 71.4% with homeopathy, only 26.7% with placebo. Locomotion, 85.7% versus 57.1% versus 26.7%. But the pain evaluation really did favor the NSAID group, 85.7% versus the homeopathy group of 57%. And so I think it's important to make sure that we are communicating that, yes, homeopathy works better than a placebo, there's no question. But it's not a quick fix. This isn't like taking Vicodin to numb out the pain. That's not how it works. When you're dealing with a chronic situation, it's not up to us what gets better first. And the other thing about this study that I want to point out is that this is not what I would consider truly a homeopathic remedy, because it's a combination of 14 diluted and succussed substances prepared homeopathically, but they're not individually proven, and they're not proven as a combo. And the reason for this, it totally makes sense, right? That if the remedies can't be individually patented, then companies want to make a combo, get the patent, and put their research dollars towards that study. And so while I think it's very helpful to have these studies that show, yes, diluted and succussed substances can create improvements in excess of placebo and demonstrate that this is not just about placebo, it also points to the importance for us of really documenting very carefully what our results are with individualized care, both when it works and when it doesn't, when it's single remedies and when it's individualized protocols. I would love to see in this study a fourth column that was vets who are doing individualized care for these animals with homeopathy. But, anytime that there's an opportunity for me to be out there addressing the possibility that someone can improve their quality of life, it's important to me to do that. And it would feel like a dereliction of duty not to do it, because I'm the big homeopath, and this is big homeopathy, and it's going to be huge. See you next week.